This sister's got an act that starts with an M. Instead of music, it's murder. Coming up next, right here on The Right Stuff. You are listening to the best, the only place to be on Tuesday night. That's right, you're listening to The Right Stuff, and you're at the right place at the right time. From England to Canada, from Detroit to the Poconos, we are showcasing Christian authors worldwide, giving you tips, tools, techniques, and resources for you, the writer, to hone and perfect your craft. Tune in every Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, right here on WPJC 104.5. And your host, Parker J. Cole. Hi, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stuff. I am so happy, so excited, and so glad you are here with me today. Let me tell you something. I just got back from the Southern California Christian Writers Conference, and let me tell you something else. It was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I can't even spell it right. That's how beautiful it was. It was phenomenal. Let me tell you something. When we went there, we had the expectation that we were going to have a good time, but we had more than a great time. We had a blessed time. I met so many authors there at the Southern California Christian Writers Conference. I was able to teach a couple of workshops about things that were important to me that you've heard me talk about on the show. I met readers, I met writers, I met agents, I met publishers, I met editors. I met everyone that was possibly there at the Southern Christian Writers Conference, and it was worth every single day. I got there on Wednesday in the plane, and then we left Saturday. And I remember thinking, you know, I had been planning for the Southern California Christian Writers Conference for so long, and then when Saturday came, I was so sad to have to leave because we had such a great time. Let me tell you, you're going to be hearing from some of those faculty members and the attendees at that conference later on this year on the show and next year. It was so good just to make so many connections. Let me tell you something. Authors, if you have not participated in a writers conference, I want you to go to Realm Makers this year. You're in speculative fiction, go to Realm Makers this year. You are going to love and enjoy the togetherness that authors and Christian authors in particular bring. So make sure you go to a writers conference. It will change your life. And today we're going to be talking to an author by the name of Lynn Hinton. She is the author of numerous books, but we're going to be talking about her book, Sister Eve, who is a nun who's also possibly a private detective. If you want to weigh in on our topic, you certainly can by calling in at 646-668-8485 and then press 1 to be live on air. Or you can hit me on Twitter at Parker J. Cole, #RightStuff with your questions and comments. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guests on the Right Stuff radio show. We'll be right back.
Engaging the culture's imagination through speculative fiction, the Untold Podcast produces audio fiction from a Christian worldview. Find us over at untoldpodcast.com, where we partner with authors to tell science fiction, fantasy, supernatural, and horror stories. Find links at untoldpodcast.com to subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, and a variety of other platforms. Each month we produce high-quality audio fiction that's free to download and free to listen. Our submissions are open, and we're always looking to add another great story to over 24 hours of narrative entertainment. Find all of our audio fiction over at www.untoldpodcast.com.
Question: if you write a book, everybody will rush out to buy it. Obvious answer, no. If you were a celebrity or if you had a huge marketing budget, then maybe you can get a lot of exposure for your book. Another solution would be to check out joeytweets.com. joeytweets.com is a promotion and marketing service with access to over 1/3 of a million followers on Twitter. joeytweets.com has 3 packages available to fit any budget. That's joeytweets.com. joeytweets.com. Get some serious exposure for your books.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff. Hi, and welcome back to the show. I am so glad again that you are here with me as we talk to my wonderful guest, co-host, and contributor today, Lynn Hinton. She is the author of numerous books, so we're going to be talking about a sister today, and not just any sister, Sister Eve, who may be a private eye. You definitely want to go ahead and get a copy of the book today. It's available on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. The title of the book is Sister Eve, Private Eye. And let me tell you what the log line is. Sister Eve knows God moves in mysterious ways, and Eve adores a good mystery, especially a murder. One thing I was thinking about as I was getting ready for the show, I kept thinking of that movie Sister Act with Whoopi Goldberg, and how Whoopi Goldberg made being a nun be cool. So I never wanted to be a nun, though, but she made the idea of a nun very interesting and to be cool. So I wonder how being a nun who may be a private eye would make it cooler. I got a question to ask you all today. What is one quality about you that will make you a good private detective? I want to get your responses, so go ahead and let me know. You can hit me on Facebook, on my Twitter, or you can call in at 646-668-8485, and then press 1 to be live on air, and I'll be able to read your responses. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest co-host and contributor today, Lynn Hinton. Lynn, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fabulous today. It's a beautiful day in North Carolina, so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
What's the weather like in North Carolina?
Well, we actually have a break in the humidity this week, which is, important. So it's cool. It's maybe 80 degrees, but only maybe 75% humidity as opposed to 95%. So we consider that cool here.
Down.
Exactly.
I was in California last week, and it got hot. And I was telling someone, I said, it started off cool as if this was going to last all day, and then all of a sudden it just slowly climbed up, and next thing you know, you're burning. When I was in California during the heat wave, so that's why I was like, what's the weather like? When I came back to Detroit, I was like, oh, blessed cool air. I will not be upset with you anymore.
Well, I have to say, one of my hottest times was August in Detroit, so you can feel my pain with the humidity here, yes.
Oh, yeah. It can get hot here, too, but thankfully, and everyone's complaining about it, but thankfully, I'm glad it hasn't been a heat wave, I'll tell you that. But, I just want to thank you so much for taking time out your schedule to be with us on the show. Really excited to delve into it. I know when I first saw your book, and I saw it actually by happenstance, I was on Twitter, and one of the Christian marketing people that I follow had tweeted your book, and I said, Sister Eve, Private Eyes. First thing I said. So I went ahead and clicked on the book, and that's why we are here today, because I wanted to let our listeners know about your book, what you're writing about, and all that good stuff. So thank you so much for being with us. But, I can always read your bio, but it's always easier to tell us about who you are in your own words. So go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Okay, let's see. I was born and raised in North Carolina. Did not think much about being a writer until I attended seminary. I suppose I had always been a writer in terms of always written, because that's sort of the way I'm able to get to my truth, that keeping a journal and sort of writing down what's happened sort of helps me understand why I may have reacted the way I did or why things upset me a certain way. So I've always used writing as a tool of self-awareness, or even as a spiritual practice. And I remember at the age of about 12, I had written a really bad short story, but I finally got my father to sit down and listen to it, and I read the story, and when I looked up, he had tears in his eyes, and I thought, wow, that is really powerful, to be able to have written something that moved my father. And so I think those two things were always very much a part of who I am, but I didn't think about being a writer until I attended Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, California, and began to take some interesting writing classes that really formed my ideas of storytelling. Up until that point, being in North Carolina in public schools, we read a lot of old white men, and I don't have any problem with old white men. Their stories just never touched me in a way that they felt like they could be my stories. And so in moving to Berkeley, I had classes like Harlem Renaissance literature, Third World American literature, had a class by Dr. Katie Cannon on Black women's literature toward a constructive ethic. And these stories just opened me up in a way no other literature ever had. And so it was in my 20s then when I began to think about telling my own stories. After seminary, I moved to the beach back in North Carolina and wrote my first novel. I just thought after you wrote a novel that somebody from New York just called you to say, hey, how's that book going? And of course that does not happen. So I then went back to the other path that I was taking, which was into ministry. So took chaplaincy training courses so that I could become a chaplain. And in the meantime kept fiddling with that first novel. I was able to get an agent. By that time, I had left chaplaincy and become a local church pastor. And the agent tried to sell the book, and it didn't work. But from then, this church experience where it was just a really happy community where the folks really seemed to love each other and they ate a lot, led me to write another book, my second, which was Friendship Cake. And it's a story about women putting together a cookbook in a church and how they find out that they really are friends and what that means for them. And so my agent got that book and was able to sell that one. And so from there, I have there have been times when I've been able to make it as a full-time writer, and then there are times when I go back and either do hospice chaplaincy or, as I am right now, working as a co-pastor, which gives me 3 months off a year to be able to focus on writing, and then the rest of the time I'm working as a pastor in a church. So kind of two paths for me, and there are incredible benefits to both of them. I still think of myself more as a writer who preaches rather than a preacher who writes, but certainly the stories that I enter into as a pastor deeply affect the stories that I tell. So it's a great dual path to have. That was a very long answer.
No, it's a good answer because it lets people know who are listening in where you kind of got your idea for Sister Eve and Private Eye. You have these two paths that collide, and I think a lot of authors have that dual purpose. Sometimes we only think we're here for one purpose, and we find out that we have a dual purpose, that there's more to us than just one thing. Not that there's anything wrong with being good at that one thing that you're good at. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think sometimes the Lord lets us know that just like He's multifaceted, we're multifaceted too. And so if you want to weigh in on our topic, you can call in at 646-668-8485 and then press 1 to be live on the air. So my next question, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but for my next question, you kind of told us how you had got an agent and your agent tried to sell your first book and couldn't, and then he or she ended up selling your second book, which was Friendship Cake. And, first of all, I like the title Friendship Cake. I love cake, and cake is just all kinds of things are getting into my mind right now. I just love cake. I love yellow cake with buttercream frosting. I don't care what color it is. It's yellow cake, buttercream frosting, but I'm not supposed to eat that anymore. So what more could you add to that about your journey to publishing, about what that looks like? What more could you add to that?
Well, even now, 20 books later and almost 20 years after Friendship Cake, it's never gotten easy. And often on my path, what will happen is that an editor will acquire my book, and then before the book comes out, that editor will either be fired or leave. And that leaves, a writer and her project without a lot of support, and it's a very discouraging path in many ways, that you have to really develop some tools, which for me are spiritual tools, of not to get lost to the discouragement or to the rejection, to find ways to stay positive and to believe in your writing and to try and find those positive voices instead of the negative ones. It really is not an easy path to be a writer. And so that's part of what I have discovered in publishing. I have a much tougher skin than I did 20 years ago, but I still get my feelings hurt when things don't quite work out the way you'd hoped, or when someone says something mean about your writing. But I think it really, seriously, the publishing life and being a writer, it really does help you develop some spiritual practices, I think, that certainly translate into the rest of life, which, is filled with difficulties. So I would certainly mention that about being published and what that has meant for me and what I've learned and who I try to be in the midst of it, so that, I've certainly seen self-centered authors and angry authors, and so I've just sort of learned from them that I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want to turn bitter or self-centered or selfish. So it's been a great path to take in terms of learning how to live with the spiritual tools that are important for me.
I like how you said that, Lynn, and I want to talk about that on the other side of the break. And what I want to talk about is those spiritual practices that have evolved as your writing career evolved too. So I want to talk about that on the other side of the break. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break right now. You still have an opportunity to call in and talk to Lynn by calling in at 646-668-8485 and then press 1 to be live on air. Or you can hit me on Twitter at ParkerJCo, #WriteStuff with your questions and comments. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guest on the Right Stuff Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Have you read the latest issue of Sormag Digital, the award-winning literary magazine for multicultural readers and writers? Sormag Digital is available quarterly and showcases interviews with the best authors in multicultural literature. Sormag Digital features craft and business articles for those interested in writing. If you're looking for a good book, check out our book reviews on what's hot in multicultural literature. For writers looking for new readers to get in front of, Sormag Digital is the perfect place to introduce your book. We offer advertising spaces that fit your promotional budget. Get your free subscription on Sormag.com or order a print issue on magcloud.com. If you would like more information about Sormag Digital, check us out on Sormag.com or contact us at sormag@yahoo.com. Sormag Digital is the magazine for multicultural readers and writers.
Authors, are you looking for a new way to get your book in the hands of new audience of targeted buyers? Then a virtual book tour is for you. Right now, virtual book tours is an excellent opportunity for you to introduce your book and who you are as an author. Launching your book is very important. A virtual book tour will connect you with readers. We at WNL, we specialize in book tours, book blasts, radio tours, cover reveals, and Facebook chat. Promoting and marketing your book is what we do. Online publicity, the exposure and the publicity is what you need. Let us help you reach new readers and a new audience. We take care of everything so you don't have to. We set up the tour for you. We connect you with bloggers to advertise your book by way of interviews, guest posts, and reviews. If you are an author of a newly published book, have an upcoming release, or just want to give a previously published book new life, a virtual book tour is your answer. Check our tours out at www.wnlbooktours.com. Visit me on Facebook. I am the owner, Paulette Harper.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff. Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to The Right Stuff here on WPJC 104.5. Again, I am so very happy you are here with me. We are talking to author Lynn Hinton. She is the author of over 20 books, but we're talking today about Sister Eve, Private Eye. And let me tell you, Sister Eve knows God moves in mysterious ways, and Eve adores a good mystery, especially a murder. Sister Eve, Private Eye is available today on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold, and I cannot wait to delve deeper into Sister Eve and the genesis behind the story. But I always like to peel back the veil of our authors. I always want to get inside what makes them tick, because so many of you out there want to be authors. And like I found out at the Southern California Christian Writers Conference, you can be a writer, but you may think, I can't do this. I'm not called to do this. Let me tell you, you are called to be a writer. If God has given you the gift to write, go ahead and pick up the pen and write. And Lynn, thank you again for being with us on the show. And as we continue to peel back the veil of who you are, you mentioned before the break about the practical application, the spiritual things that you had learned as you were evolving in your career as a writer. So go ahead and tell us a little about those spiritual applications.
Well, I was actually just looking in the 12th chapter of Romans, and the 11th verse, which says, "Do not lag in zeal, be ardent in spirit, and rejoice in hope, and contribute to the needs of the saints, and extend hospitality to strangers." So, in the midst of what can be kind of a self-absorbed path in terms of a person being a storyteller and focusing on writing and kind of a very introverted exercise in life, and as I mentioned, can be very discouraging. To be mindful about being a person of faith is also a person of hope, and a person who continues to do the work that Christians are called to do, which is to care for the saints and be compassionate and to keep doing those things even though our work can feel very self-involved. So those are some of the spiritual practices, just in terms of hopefulness and cheerfulness and staying, true to the work that you're called to do as a person of faith. In terms of the writing itself, the writing is a tool for me in my spiritual life, so that I will often write my prayers down or journal as a part of my spiritual path. So the writing itself is a spiritual discipline for me. That's about what I think about with regards to your question.
I like how you said that a person of faith is also a person of hope, and I think that's very insightful of you to use that terminology, because sometimes we may have faith, we don't have hope, if I can say it that way, and you really can't have faith if you don't have hope. But I think we say, well, we believe in God, but we don't think He'll do this for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
or we don't think that He's going to come through and answer our dreams. So I really like how you said that. And that is a spiritual application that every writer can use, especially for those of us who are a little bit more introverted than me. So I'm not introverted at all. I am out in your face. I found that out at the conference. Poor man, he was looking at me the whole time while I dominated the conversation. He just stared at me. But I'm not, like I said, but there's many extroverted writers out there. So I appreciate that you said that, Now, when it comes to writing, I want to know a little about your process, because many authors who listen in on the show, they all have different processes that they use. Some people, they have, like me, I have to have a certain mood and atmosphere, and my dog Sarah has to be near me. She usually sits on my feet and warms my feet up while I'm writing. Or she sits next to me. I just have her there. But what does your writing process look like? Whatever that looks like, whether it's your research, whether it's marketing, whether it's getting into a particular mood. What does your writing process look like?
Well, when I'm able to have entire days, and what a gift that is, I used to have a writing schedule where I run in the mornings, and then I would have a time of meditation and journaling, and then I would read something inspirational from a writer whose words just flow. For me, that would be Louise Erdrich was someone whose writing is like that. Toni Morrison, novelists whose words are like poetry. So I'd read a couple of pages from them just to get in the thought of lovely words. And so then by that time it'd probably be about 10 o'clock, so I would write until lunchtime, and then this was when All My Children was still on, so I would eat my lunch and watch All My Children. Oh, I miss it so much. And then I would go back and write. And then I would go back and write from 2 until, I found a good closing place, a good stopping place, and usually that's about 5 or 6. And then the next day I would start over by going back over what I had written the day before. It's changed a little bit in the last few years, especially as I've had to work other jobs. I still would try, like at hospice, I tried to work 10-hour days and get a full day off for writing. So I would always try to negotiate that, and this job is allowing me to do that too, because I write better knowing I have a big a big amount of time, like a whole day, as opposed to just an hour here or an hour there. I find that very difficult to get into the story for just an hour. So if I don't have more than 3 hours, I rarely would even try to write. So and I'm spoiled in that way. I've just tried to make it so that I would always have these big chunks. And then I tend to write really quickly. So if I kind of have an idea of what the story is, or at least who the character is, then usually I can write a book in 3 months. Is kind of what it has generally taken me. And then I finish, I put it away for a little while, I edit as I go along, I put it away for a week or two, pull it back out, and do an entire edit of the whole book, and then put it away, pull it out again, and do the same thing over again. So, that's a kind of a daily process, and then an overall project process of how I write. In terms of what. That. Yeah. Oh, I'm really lucky because I hear of writers all the time who don't get that, and they just have to take the hour or two when they get it because maybe they're, raising a family or, have 2 jobs, and so I know it's a real privilege to get a big chunk of time like that. In terms of stories, I will be sometimes often drawn to, one of the themes that really draws my attention is what has happened in someone's life, or what could happen in someone's life to cause a great transformation, like an aha moment. And, what is that? And I'll hear about things that happen, and I'll go, oh, well, that could certainly change a person's life. So I'm fascinated by that. And then I've always been fascinated by unlikely friendships or relationships, and, people who you would not think would come together, that their stories would merge in any way. And so I like the thought of writing about that happening. That just gives me lots of that's just very interesting to me, both literally in terms of real life and watching that happen, but then also in terms of storytelling.
One thing that I wanted to ask you, because I think this is a very important question, especially to our aspiring authors out there, is how has, completing your first book and getting that published, how has that changed your life?
Well, it certainly validated the writing. It shouldn't get as much power as we give it, but it does for me. So my second one was the first one published. I'm not sure I would have written a third one if the second one had not been published. I might have done something else creative. I might have done a book of sermons or done worship resources, something else. I might not have written another novel if I hadn't gotten one published. And I always say that is never meant to discourage anybody from writing. I think everybody should write, that wants to. I think that's just a wonderful thing, and everybody's story and how they tell a story is different. I just know for myself, I'm not sure I could have kept a shelf of unpublished manuscripts. I know myself, and I feel like I would have stopped at some point. So that first published book did give me the validation to keep writing, and that my stories are valuable to someone else other than just myself. So that was was what that first book did. Yeah.
I think I like how you said, it certainly gives you validation, but you made the comment that it shouldn't take as much impact as we give it. And that's interesting to me because I always felt because I published that first book, it actually changed my life. But go ahead and expand on that thought, because I want to make sure that anything that we do, first of all, God gets the glory. And the second thing is make sure that we don't take the creativity that He's given us for granted. So go ahead and expand on that thought here so our listeners can partake of your knowledge.
Expand on which part?
Well, you said that it validated your writing, but we shouldn't make it as big of an impact as we do make it when it comes to writing a book.
Yes. Well, and I certainly think in these times now, the self-publishing aspect is it's such a viable way to get your stories out that wasn't 20 years ago. And now, the packages look better, and what I've found is that authors are expected to do 95% of their marketing, even with the big publishing houses. So publishing yourself, you're not really doing any more than you would do as a publisher with as a writer published by a bigger house. So so anybody now can publish their works with the self-publishing venue to take. So I just I also just because you've been chosen to be published by one of the bigger houses, that really doesn't mean you're any better of a writer than someone who didn't get that. Especially today, it's just harder, and they are publishing less what are called mid-list writers. They're just they're choosing to do the big names that they'll be guaranteed certain sales, and they're willing to put all their money for advances to those authors as well as all the marketing money to those people. So it really cannot be the only source of validation for you, because it is not a true validation, because just because you don't get chosen to be published by those big houses, that really doesn't speak to your gift of writing and storytelling. So that's why we have to look to another source, for our validation.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because a lot of people make a big difference between self-published and traditionally published authors, especially now because it's so easy to self-publish that you can get your message out there, whatever your message is, whether it's about anything. You get your message out there, and you can get it out there to people. But I like how you said we need another source of validation. I guess our validation at the end of the day comes from the Lord, because He validates us because of who He is and who we are to Him, which is His sons and daughters of the King. And I like how you made that clear, and I like your candor. And we're talking to Lynn Hinton. She is the author of over 20 books. We're talking today about Sister Eve, Private Eye. And if you want to get a copy of Lynn's book, you certainly can. Go to Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. When we come back from this next break, we are going to be digging deep down and dirty into Sister Eve, Private Eye. So if you have a question, you want to weigh in, go ahead and weigh in. Call in at 646-668-8485 and then press 1 to be live on air. Or hit me on Twitter at ParkerJCo, #RightStuff with your questions or comments. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guests on the Right Stuff Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Are you a reader looking for more compelling Christian fiction? Maybe something a little more edgy or a bit more real? Are you tired of most Christian fiction shying away from the truth and settling for a rose-tinted view of the world and its issues? Or are you an author who has a compelling story to tell, but you're afraid it doesn't jive with today's brand of Christian or secular fiction? Are you tired of Christian publishers telling you that your content is too edgy? Or maybe you've tried submitting your content under the radar to secular publishers only to be told your themes are a bit too religious? We invite you to take a look at the Crossover Alliance. We are an online publishing company that specializes in edgy Christian speculative fiction with Christian themes and real-world content. Our company is formed from authors and readers just like you who are breaking into the mainstream and Christian markets with this compelling genre. Head over to the www.thecrossoveralliance.com for all the details on who we are, what we do, and what we accept. Right now, if you sign up for our email newsletter, you'll receive a free digital copy of our first short story anthology. Check us out today and help us spread the word about the Crossover Alliance, where light shines brighter in the darkness.
God gives humans the gift of making amazing stories to glorify Him. At speculativefaith.com, our ministry is to help fans explore fantasy, science fiction, supernatural stories, and beyond from an intentional and biblical Christian perspective. We share daily articles and have extensive archives tackling hot topics like end times beliefs, the art of writing, creative excellence in the Christian subcultures, discernment, sex, magic, Harry Potter, and space aliens and the Bible. If you are a parent or anyone else with a discriminating palate, our reviewers explore fantastical novels, movies, television, and games in light of God's beauty, goodness, and truth. Want to find Christian stories? The Spec Faith Library lists every fantastical novel we can find from a Christian author. It's all part of our mission to discern, engage, and enjoy fantastical human creativity in honor of our Creator, Jesus Christ. SpeculativeFaith.com. Exploring fantastical stories for God's glory.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff. Hi, and welcome back. You are listening to the Queen of Tuesday Nights, Parker J. We are talking to Lynn Hinton. She is the author of the book Sister Eve, Private Eye, as well as 19 others. You can go ahead and get a copy of the book today on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. Let me tell you, you're not going to be disappointed, and I have been waiting so long to talk to you about Sister Eve Lynn, because I'm just dying to see how in the world did you connect a nun with a private detective. I am very, very excited to talk about that. So where did the genesis of this idea come from?
So there were a couple of things. One is that Sister Eve is trying to make a decision whether she's going to stay a nun or become a private detective. Her father is requiring her to come home to take care of him, and so she's leaving the convent to do this for him. And she's leaving at a time when she was already sort of questioning her call as a nun in this particular monastery. And she goes home to her father, who is a private detective. And so that was attractive to me, because I think I've always sort of struggled for a long time, at least, of am I a minister or am I a writer? And that's still something I still struggle with. It's still, you know, I as you said, it's a dual purpose life, but I'm a little more like I want to know just one. Just give me the one, not try to do two. So that has been a constant struggle for me. So I think having a character that's having a similar struggle of two different life journeys, and one of them being, you know, in a vocation of a religious vocation, it just felt like something I needed to write about for myself, again, I guess, to get to my truth. I lived in New Mexico. I still love New Mexico, and I will go back there to retire. That's where I'm pretty sure I will die in the dirt, as my friends say about living in the Southwest. And there was a monastery there that housed both men and women, monks and nuns. That's very rare. They're usually convents and monasteries, so there's rare communities where both sexes are living together. But this one was, so I was kind of intrigued by this particular place. And they were Benedictines, very much known for their hospitality, and apparently they had gotten in trouble for serving communion to Protestants. And so when I went there for a retreat, I began to hear about this community, and I was very intrigued by that particular place. So that's what the place where the story comes from. So that was kind of intriguing for me. And then there's a little town in New Mexico called Madrid, but it's spelled like Madrid, and people that don't live around there often mispronounce it. So that was interesting to me. So I wanted her to have a name that continued to be mispronounced as a part of this whole identity issue and who am I kind of thing. And then I guess the other part was being in New Mexico as a hospice chaplain. 98% of our patients were Catholic. So as a Protestant from southeastern United States coming into the Southwest and moving into the cultures of the Native American Catholics as well as the Hispanic Catholics, was a brand new world for me as a chaplain and in terms of cultural differences. So I was fascinated with Catholicism and with the women who take those religious vows, and how that might be different from a Protestant woman who becomes a minister. So all of those things were of interest to me. And then I like killing people. So, you know, every once in a while I have to take a break from these other books and kill somebody once in a while. So that's why I do the mysteries.
See, I have always told people, and I totally believe it, that there is somewhat of a God complex in writers. There's somewhat of a God complex in us, because we can take these characters, we can kill them, we can have them go through all kind of horrible things, and it's okay because we're entertaining. We can put a different name on it.
Exactly.
We can't do it for real, because I always joke. I said, the Lord had made just one less commandment, it'd be a lot less people in the world. So I like that. I love that. Think about the Sister Eve is, it's a book that comes from your own experiences, and you're putting that into Sister Eve, and then being fascinated by the different ministry that you're a part of while you're in New Mexico, the different things you came across and stuff like that. So I really think that writers, when you're asked the question, what do you write about? They always say, write what you know. But here's the thing, you didn't know. You didn't know about that at all. You came into it, to do your job, and then you got all these fascinating details that came from it, and now we have Sister Eve. So go ahead, tell us a little bit about Sister Eve.
Sister Eve.
The book, I mean.
Can't decide
not
who
her
she is.
personality,
Yes.
but the book, yeah.
About the book. Okay, so I'm trying to even, the third one just came out last year, so I'm trying to go back to that first one. I do remember in that first book that there is a lot about her relationship with her father. So my dad's a Southern Baptist preacher. I'm ordained in the United Church of Christ. So we had some rough years there when I left his denomination and came into this one, and when I embraced a more progressive Christianity than what he does. So there were some difficult times for me and my dad, and so that's also a big theme in the Sister Eve book, the first one, where she's really trying to sort through her issues, particularly with her dad. Then, and I don't know why at that particular time I was led to write that book, but that's the one I wrote, intended to dedicate it to my dad, whom I did. And then just before the book came out, he died suddenly of a heart attack.
Oh, no.
And so there was this, on a deeper level, this sense of knowing that for myself, I needed to kind of work on my relationship with my dad and kind of find myself at a different place with him, which did happen at the end of the book of writing that I came to love him in a different way, and to want, to just have moved to a different place in our relationship of sort of enjoying us being older adults together and what we would be able to share together as ministers, and he enjoyed writing too, so just those aspects. So some beautiful things happened, but at the end of the book I was planning to move back to North Carolina to be closer to my parents, and then he died before that was that could happen. So the book is on many levels was touching me and meeting me in places that I and I even wonder sometimes if the books that we write aren't really just meant for our own therapeutic value. So
I
this
totally
one certainly, so this one certainly was very much attuned to what was happening in my personal life.
I have to resonate with that commentary, wondering if our books are just about us, working things out. There is a quote I heard a couple of years ago from a fellow author friend of mine. Her name is J.M. Butler. And she said, the first book you can kind of hide yourself. The second book you can kind of hide yourself. But with each book you reveal yourself more and more. That was the gist of her quote that she made. And I thought about how relevant and quite insightful that comment was. And so I totally feel you there, because I just see this intertwining mix of your own journey with your parents, with Sister Eve and her father. But in this case, Sister Eve is a nun. Her father is a police officer who's also a private eye. And so before I go into it, I asked our listeners, I basically said, what quality about you and themselves would make you a good private detective? And so Sheila from Detroit says, insight, analysis, and being able to be a good listener. Sheila, thank you so much for your comment. Now let me ask you a question, Lynn. Does Eve project or have that aspect of herself as well?
Absolutely, and certainly having trained as a nun, lived in a convent, she has had to develop those very skills that Sheila talked about, especially the listening well. So, and I think, to be a good private detective as well as a good minister, one has to be able to listen and to pay attention to the small things, the small details that other people kind of fly past. And certainly, anytime we've seen televised detectives, or movies, or read other books, all of these folks do have a real gift for paying attention where other people are not paying attention. So I do think those skills from having practiced as a nun have shaped Eve to be just naturally a good private detective.
Jeanette from Austin, Texas says, worked for the federal government for 20 years. Thank you, Jeanette. What about Eve? Has she worked for a institution like the government or something like that? What's her call to fame there?
Yeah, no, she went straight from college to the convent. So, no, never really worked outside of her religious vocation. But I could see 20 years in the federal government would probably give you lots of skills.
Oh, yeah. I told Jeanette when I was responding to her, I said, you can hack me then, couldn't you? Because we just, about this global hacking that just happened today from these cyber terrorists out there. I said, you could probably hack me then. So I thought about that, too. Now, Marilyn from, where's Marilyn from? I can't see where she's from. Marilyn said, people come to me to find stuff online. I ask questions and consider angles of issues that to others seem quite unrelated to get my answers. Then people wonder how I know things. She says in quotations. Marilyn, thank you so much for your comment. What about what about Eve Lynn? Does she ask questions that may be unrelated to what the actual case is about?
I think so. And she comes from a different angle, so she's not asking just for the facts. She might be asking for emotion from suspects or emotion, to kind of, and that tells us a lot about who possibly is the killer, just to kind of learn the emotional makeup of people. So she would be able to read people well, and part of how she's able to read people well is that, she would ask different questions than some other people who come from a different path, like from just the police path or just a interrogating path. She would, and I'm thinking that she has, and maybe Marilyn does too, just this presence about her that makes her a comfortable person to ask those questions of, or for somebody to come to her to say, help me find this, that I think certainly Eve, in having been a nun, has developed this very available presence so that people feel more comfortable with her, perhaps to share more in a confessional way, perhaps that then leads to solving some mysteries, maybe.
For this next one, I got to read a part of the blurb here for our listeners. A Hollywood director has disappeared, and the sultry starlet he's been running around with isn't talking. And so Jeremy from Dothan, Alabama, made this comment. Jeremy says, I'm fairly observant. I look for things that are out of place, in this case, the Hollywood director. Things that are outside the boundaries of what would be expected, but are nevertheless associated. I love looking through the Bible and finding places where people assume X only to have Y be what the Bible actually says. Jeremy, thank you so much for your comment. What about Eve? Even though Jeremy's coming from an evangelical point of view and Eve's coming from a Catholic point of view, what about Eve? Does she look to the Word or to her traditional practices when she's going through her cases?
Not so much. She prayed a lot, and her relationship with God was, I think, more of a kind of a mystical and related to nature. So that like in the Hebrew scriptures, the presence of God would come in the cloud of smoke or the earthquake, and so she probably, instead of looking in scripture more, would be looking to the signs in nature more, is my guess, which is part of what happens in the Southwest anyway, and part of what happens in living in the desert. People are more attuned to weather, to the change from day to night, because the desert can be a dangerous place. So I think that's part of where she probably has a deeper listening ear, more to nature than perhaps scripture. I didn't use a lot of scripture for her. So yeah, That's an interesting question, and why perhaps she doesn't go to the scriptures as much. And I'm not sure I have the answer to that. So
now that I think about it, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about that. It helps us get into her. So John from Syracuse, New York. John says, I'm pretty smart. That's all he said.
Like.
So that's what makes him a good detective. I'm pretty smart. What about Eve? Is she top of the line, genius level smart? What do you think?
No, I think she has a high emotional intelligence, and she read a lot. So I think that makes people smart. Anybody who reads a lot of books, they tend to be smarter than other people because you just learn more about lots of other things and lots of other cultures and lots of other people. So she had already, her father had already seen these gifts in her as a police officer and was sort of encouraging her in that. And so there was this break in their relationship when she was choosing not to go that path, but chose instead this religious path that he was not all that happy about. So she's not as book smart as she is emotionally smart, of being able to read people and read situations and, again, listen well and pay attention to the things that other people might miss. She also kind of uncovers what happened because she develops a relationship with the one everybody else thinks is the suspect, this girlfriend. And I do think that's a gift that Eve has, this building relationship, so that, again, that building of the trust, that she's able then to hear more of the story because people just automatically trust her because either they know she's a nun or because she's developed those spiritual gifts of friendship and compassion, so that people kind of automatically are drawn to those folks and are willing to tell more than they would to someone that they don't feel that closeness with.
Well, I think being a nun generally does give you that sense of safety, that sense of understanding, compassion, just based off the whole vocation of itself, and that's why in the blurb here you said, soon Sister Eve finds herself soul searching every step of the way. How can she choose between the vocation of her heart and the job in her blood, and it kind of comes back to that whole dual purpose thing that you experienced throughout your life as a minister and as a writer, whether or not there's this dual purpose that you have. And so Elaine from Sherman, Texas says, I've watched forensic shows for years, not the drama ones, the real life ones. Elaine, thank you so much for your comment. What about Eve? Is she a TV watcher?
She watches American Idol.
Yes. Yes.
And then there is conversation of somebody trying to use some marker from television, and she says, I haven't watched anything like that since the 1970s. So the only show that the sisters were watching was American Idol. So no, she doesn't watch much TV.
I love that. And then David from China, David says, my natural tendency as an ENTP is to think through all theoretical ways a particular situation might play out. That, I think, would be very handy unless someone is watching a mystery movie or reading a mystery book. Then when I figure out the ending by a third of the way through, it's kind of annoying, especially to others around me. LOL. David, thank you so much for your comment. What about Eve? Does she give away the plot before anyone else gets a chance to figure that one out?
I don't think so. Because she's not figuring it out to the end herself. So, yeah, no, she wouldn't let that be known. So that's funny. He's using Myers-Briggs, I guess, the ENTP. Is that what he said he was?
That's the Myers-Briggs, more or less. That's Myers-Briggs. And I find that fascinating, too. I forgot what the acronyms mean. Don't ask me because you'll never get them from me what they mean.
Yeah, they're very telling about how we move in the world, I think, Myers-Briggs does. I'm a very high J who tries to appear as if I'm a P, so I'm incredibly, I love organization. That's my favorite thing, is organizing something, but I like to look like, I'm this spontaneous, easygoing P kind of person, but I'm so not. I'm such a J, and I scored no T's, only feeling, so it's thinking or feeling, so I'm an NF, so everything to me is about how did I feel about that, which is a good thing, but also can be terribly unnerving to the T people. So, so I like to be used Myers-Briggs. I'm sorry.
As much as you can live. I said, Bible says, as much as you can live peacefully with all men. As much as you can.
Exactly.
Well, I want to thank our those who are listening in and participating in our talk here about what makes you a good private eye. Because what I did, Lynn, is this. I took, Sheila's response. She said, insight, analysis, and being able to be a good listener. I said, Perry Mason. And then Jeanette, she said that she worked for the federal government, and so I couldn't think of anything. So I said, you could just hack me, so we got a hacker. And then Marilyn, she made her comment. I said, that's Columbo. And then Jeremy made his comment, and I said, well, that's Mulder, Fox Mulder from X-Files, And then John said Sherlock. John said, I'm pretty smart, so the first person I thought was Sherlock Holmes. And then Elaine said that she watches forensic show, so I thought of the show Bones, where they're looking at all the forensics and all that kind of stuff. And then when David made his comment, I thought Poirot, Agatha Christie's Poirot. And so if you were to take all of these people, in a sense, would that be Sister Eve? She'd be all these various components of all these famous and not so famous private detectives. Would you put them all together, or is she really like one particular private eye in fiction?
Ooh, that's a very good question that I don't have an answer to. I love Columbo, so he just sort of muddles his way through things, but is obviously much smarter than he appears, and he's kind of annoying with his questions. She's a little bit like that, I think, but doesn't really have a hidden agenda. She's just sort of asking these kind of questions that are, I don't think other people would ask. But I'm not sure. Other than that, I don't have it would take me a minute to think about all the detectives I've seen and the ones that you mentioned, and then sort of put her with them. I'm not quite sure.
Well, that's the whole thing about mysteries, especially cozy mysteries. Like, would you consider yourself this book a cozy mystery?
Yes.
It was like well, with cozy mysteries, that's what it is. You got this aspect of all different kind of people surrounding you. We did get a quick comment from Sherry K. Sherry says, I'm embarrassingly curious about details and nosy. I wish I had the nerve to ask all the questions I actually want to ask. LOL. Sherry, thank you so much. And the first thing I thought of when she mentioned that was Monk, and I love Monk. I love the show Monk. I thought that character was absolutely brilliant. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. And that's the thing about cozy mysteries. You got the opportunity to take regular people like a nun and put her in interesting situations where her intellect, her life experiences, her feelings, the way she understands people all comes together to solve where's the body and who took the body. You know what I mean? That's what I like about cozy mysteries. They do have that that aspect of them that a lot of people don't quite appreciate. And then Ricky from, I think she's from, she's in, where is Ricky from? I'm trying to get her comment here real quick before from Beaverton, Oregon. Ricky made the comment. She said, I love research and digging into things. Internet searches, library records, etc. are what I do to relax. Ricky, thank you so much for joining in. And what first comes to mind is actually Law and Order. Law and Order comes to mind because they do a lot of research on there. So we got all these aspects that people think make them very good private detective. So I got to ask you now, what is one quality about you, Lynn, that'll make you a great private detective? There you go.
Yes, I was thinking that was what that quiet sounded was my brain trying to answer that question. I think I am easy to be around, so I think people might feel comfortable enough around me to probably talk more than they should, and even though I used to talk a lot, the older I'm getting, the less I talk and the more I just prefer to listen because I'm so tired of myself. I think after you get a certain age, you go, oh, my God, I'm so sick of myself, shut up. So I like listening to other people, and I do think that would make for a good detective because, sometimes people will just tell you more than they should. And so I think maybe the fact that I listen longer maybe than somebody else might mean I might get more information, which would then help solve a mystery and me catch a killer quicker than somebody else, perhaps.
And you know what I just thought of, don't you? As soon as you said that you're easy to talk to and people like to listen, I thought of Miss Marple. That's the first person I thought of, Miss Marple. or to me even better, Jessica Fletcher, Murder, She Wrote. And so I love that.
You just have a plethora of these detectives in mind. That's pretty cool.
I like this whole idea. I love the idea. What we're gonna do is take a really quick break. When we come back, we're beginning to the end of our show with Lynn Hinton. If you want to go ahead and get a copy of the book, you certainly can. Get a copy of it today. Sister Eve, Private Eye. Sister Eve knows God moves in mysterious ways, and Eve adores a good mystery, especially a murder. Go ahead and get a copy of that book today on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. When we come back, we'll get to the last bit of our interview with Lynn Hinton. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guest on the Right Stuff Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Hi. Is your book club in need of some fresh and exciting questions to ask club members and authors at your next book club meeting? Literations, the book game, is 70 thought-provoking questions to really get into an in-depth discussion about the books you and your club members are reading. These questions really get into the characters, the storyline, and into the author's head. These questions may just give you and your book club members a whole new way to get into a new conversation, a literation. Literations is also a great set of tools for bloggers, interviewers, and authors to use a discussion question. Are you ready to get lit? Please visit our website at litversations.com, litversation.com. And please like our Facebook page at Simply Said Reading Accessories. Thank you.
Have you read the latest issue of SORMAG Digital, the award-winning literary magazine for multicultural readers and writers? SORMAG Digital is available quarterly and showcases interviews with the best authors in multicultural literature. SORMAG Digital features craft and business articles for those interested in writing. If you're looking for a good book, check out our book reviews on what's hot in multicultural literature. For writers looking for new readers to get in front of, SORMAG Digital is the perfect place to introduce your book. We offer advertising spaces that fit your promotional budget. Get your free subscription on SORMAG.com or order a print issue on MagCloud.com. If you would like more information about SORMAG Digital, check us out on SORMAG.com or contact us at SORMAG@yahoo.com. SORMAG Digital is the magazine for multicultural readers and writers.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff. Hi, and welcome back to the show. We've been having such a wonderful time with my guest co-host and contributor today, Lynn Hinton. She is the author of the book Sister Eve, Private Eye, is available on Amazon.com. And not just one book, there's 2 and 3 books available for Sister Eve. So go ahead, find out what Sister Eve is all about. Go ahead and get a copy of that book today. And make sure when you do, you leave a review. All authors need review. Reviews help us breathe at night. It helps us to know where we can improve, what you liked about the book. Did we accomplish what we set out to accomplish? So go ahead and make sure you leave a review as well. And Lynn, once again, thank you so much for being with me on the show. We got a couple of minutes left. We're already kind of over time, but it doesn't matter. We got a couple of minutes left here. I want people to know what your next projects are so they can stay in tune with you.
Great, thank you. So I have a book coming out next year, and it is The View from Here, and it's about a woman who lives in a tree, because I've always wanted to live in a tree, so that's what this character is doing. And it's about forgiveness primarily, and so I'm excited about that book. Will be published by New South Publishers and will be out next spring. So that's the next book coming out. And I just have to say, Parker J., when I saw your name and the invitation to your show, I really thought you were like this skinny white dude. So it's lovely to meet you and to talk with you. And not that I have a problem with skinny white dudes, but it was just kind of funny. It's just kind of funny what we think about when we see particular names. So.
Oh yeah, anyway. I've had that happen before. I've been called Mr. so many times. It's funny. I go with it. You know, if there are other things to get upset about in the world, you know, what
right.
I mean. No problem. I want people to be able to connect with you online. So go ahead, tell us what your social media hookup is.
Okay, I have a Facebook page, which is Lynn Hinton's Books, so feel free to contact me there, or my website, which is www.lynnhinton.com.
And, you know, this show is always about encouraging authors to pick up the pen and use the gift that God gave them to write. So in a few moments we have left, go ahead and encourage those aspiring authors out there today.
Your story matters. What you have to say and how you see the world is important. So don't forget that and do it. Write it down.
Lynn, I love how you said that. Your story matters. I really appreciate you being with me on the show today, and thank you so much. And I can't wait to have you back and have you back real soon.
I'd love that. Thanks so much. All the best to you and your authors and to this show, and thank you for what you're doing for local writers and for those of us trying to do our best out there. So thank you.
We were talking today to Lynn Hinton. She is the author of over 20 books. So we showcase today Sister Eve, Private Eye. It's a number of books in this series. So go ahead and get your first copy, which is Sister Eve, Private Eye, today on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. One thing that Lynn said that I really enjoyed was she said, a person of faith is also a person of hope. Are you believing God but not believing that God will help you in your writing career? Is that why you're afraid to pick up the pen and use the gift that God gave you? Well, if you listen to what Lynn said this. She said, your story matters. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and write stuff. Thank you for joining me for this edition of The Right Stuff. You have a wonderful, absolutely glorious, blessed day from the Queen of Tuesday Nights, Parker J. And have a good evening. Thank you for joining us for this edition of The Right Stuff. Follow Parker online at parkerjcole.com. To hear this show and other shows, visit the show archive at therightstuffradio.wordpress.com. We'll be back same time next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Time.